for anyone that doesn't know, Tableau is a really, really great resource. And the thing that I like to say about it is, so if Excel is sort of like using a PC, Tableau for data visualization is like using a Mac. It has a really beautiful user interface. You don't have to type in the formulas, and you can really easily make visualizations that look really great. And then it also has some very cool artistic possibilities, which is sort of what's up on this screen that I'm showing you right now. So on tableupublic.com, which I highly recommend everyone go, you can see up here in the corner, it says sign in. You can make a free Tableau Public account, and that's important if you're going to be using the free version of Tableau, because you will only be able to interact with Tableau and use and save your work via the Tableau Public server. So if you're using Tableau Public today to follow along, you can go ahead and make an account. It's really easy and really instantaneous. But Tableau people can show off the visualizations they make in the Viz of the Day gallery, which is what I have pulled up here. And so don't panic. We're not going to make anything this complicated. These ones are kind of an example of the really cool stuff that you can do with Tableau. And I love to go and look through these, and people make some of the most creative visualizations. And so we see here, this is like a great map, right? But something that's cool about Tableau, if I click on this, so that's not, let's do one that has more on the map. There we go. So you can see what is really interesting about Tableau, different than a lot of other data visualization programs, is you can make your data visualization interactive, and you can do mapping. We will not be doing mapping today. Today is going to just be a very introductory session, but that will be covered in the third session if everyone is coming. And you'll be able to learn how to make a really basic map sort of like this. But I highly recommend kind of going and looking through this. It's public.tableau.com, and then you can go to Discover Viz of the Day, and you can kind of see all of these really cool things that you can make with it. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this one's like about first month with the baby. Someone's made a data visualization of this. Very cool. And this is what a Tableau Public profile looks like. Me and Joel teach Tableau Public a lot, so these are a couple of different workbooks I've saved to the Tableau Public server. This is what it looks like when you save. And again, if you have Tableau Public, which I'll talk about the difference in just 1 second, this is the only place that you can save to. So if you're going to be using this to make Tableau to make a report, to do research, I highly recommend getting the license to use the desktop version. And that's in that version, you are able to save to your own computer. So it's kind of important to have that. But if you're just practicing, if you're just learning, using Tableau Public, it's free, it's instantaneous to download, and you can, make this sort of profile, and you can do stuff with that. Note that this profile is public. If someone went to my profile, it's like a social media network. So depending on the type of data you're using, before you publish something to your public profile, just make sure that you have sort of like the permissions to be able to do that. But that's what a Tableau public account looks like. And we'll come back at the end of this session to saving. That's going to be part of what we're going to talk about today, but just so you have an idea. Today, we have the handout, which if you wanted to open that up, that's going to be sort of what we're doing today. It could be kind of helpful if you miss something that I do. And then this Excel file, Harvard MIT online courses data, is the data set that we're going to be using today. So you can click there and download it. So the data set we're going to be using today, I have a link to it on here. So this is where we got it from. It's a free online course, is a data set about online courses at Harvard and MIT. And we thought we wanted to use some kind of education related data so we could give you guys a good example and not just use the typical data we use. And so if you want to know a little bit more about this data set and some of the metadata and stuff like that, or just download a copy of it, you can also do that from here. However, if you download it, it's going to be a CSV file. So on here, I saved it as an Excel workbook, so it would be easier to do it with Tableau. But if you just want to see where we got this data set and a little more information about it, it's a free public one. This is the one that we're using. So if everyone wants to go ahead and click the handout and have that open, and get the data set and have that open, and go ahead and open up Tableau. This is what it looks like when you first open up Tableau. Now, I do want to say I am using the desktop version of Tableau. So if there's anything that I'm doing that looks slightly different, if you're using the public, it's just because it's the desktop version. So for example, we have this little connect table right here that allows you to connect to various types of data. If you're using the desktop version, you have a lot more options of different types of data that you can connect to. But that's not an issue for us today because we're just going to be connecting to an Excel file. And so also, when you open up this home page, you can see it'll link automatically to the last, whatever data sets that you were working on. So you can kind of open those right back up if you want. And then, yeah, you can also connect to I think this might just be on the desktop version, but you can connect to the Tableau server and get some public data from there if you wanted to, look around with that. And so really quickly, we're just going to go ahead and connect. So to connect to the data, we're going to go click Microsoft Excel. And then you can go to so you'll go to your download folder. I'm going to go to where I already knew that I had mine stored. And so if you just open it and give it a second, it's going to think about it. It's going to open the data. And so um, this is the data source page. So if we look all the way down in the bottom left corner, that's how we know that we're on the data source page. Sheet 1 is highlighted because we just opened this, but we'll get to that later. So we're on the data source page. You can connect to multiple data sources this way. We're not going to do that today. We're just going to use one. We can see up here that we've connected to the Excel file, saying need more data. You can connect that way. And we see the way that Tableau has interpreted our data, right? And so this looks pretty good. This is a data set that we chose because it already kind of works very well with Tableau. And this is kind of what you want it to look like. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about prepping the data. And so I'll go to, there's a Tableau page. Okay, getting your data Tableau ready. So they have this nice graphic here that kind of shows what your data should look like in Tableau. It wants it to look like a spreadsheet, but particularly when you have your data attributes, those should be the columns, whereas the rows, that's where the data and the different attributes of each of the data is going to be in the row, whereas the attribute types are in the columns. And that's the way the Tableau likes for that to function. If your data set looks opposite of that, so again, you should have more rows than columns, kind of think of it like that. I would go ahead and fix it in Excel. You can do a couple of things that we'll talk about to change your data once you've imported it into Tableau, but it's so much easier if you kind of go ahead and make your Excel file look like what you want it to look like before you do that. Tableau Prep usually comes with the Tableau desktop, definitely with the teacher version. I'm not sure if it comes with the student version, but that's a program you can use to kind of get your data ready. It's a little bit more complicated. But I think that this little graphic right here, there's a pivot function in Tableau Prep where you can kind of switch your data around, but it kind of shows you, Tableau prefers, instead of having all of these columns with grains, vegetables, fruits, dairy, meat, it's like you have 3 columns of the data types, and then each of the rows is the data. And that's kind of how you want it to be. And when we're talking about data types, we can see this right here. And if I go back to Tableau, we can see we have these little icons to tell you the different types of the data. And if you have your worksheet open, I have a table with some of the data types. So basically Tableau is automatically going to sort your data into different types, which is really important because it's how Tableau knows how to build your data visualizations. And so ABC is text or string data, like a name, which you can see is important. And the people have put, who made this data set, they put a little X next to the course number, because if you didn't have that there, Tableau would probably interpret that as a numerical piece of data, but it's really not, because the course number is just a symbol. It's the number for the course. You're not going to be adding or doing any calculations on the course numbers. It's just identifying it. And there's also the little calendar icon, which lets you know that it is a date or date and time related data. So one thing that's really important with that too is you can say just the date, or you can say the date and the time. As you can see, when I just clicked it, that's how you can change the different type of data. So I could change it to a string data, which again, that's just like a text data or a name, or a date data. And then I don't think we have any in this We don't have any of the ones with the globe, which is a geographic value in this data set because we're not going to be doing any geographic or mapping data today. But in Tableau 3, for sure, in this workshop, we'll be using some geographic data, but that's really important, and you'll know that by the little globe. And then as you can see, the majority of our data in this data set is going to have the little hashtag sign, and it's green. That's important compared to the blue. We'll talk about that in a second. So that is a numerical value or quantitative data. And so all the quantitative data is going to be the little hashtag sign is going to be green, and anything that's blue is going to be our qualitative data, which that's really important because knowing whether or not it's qualitative or quantitative is going to determine what types of visualizations that you can build, and Tableau is going to know that for you. So an example of one that we have in here is, so this is a data set about different courses that people took online at Harvard and MIT. And so there's a data set for the year. And the launch date is like the true date one, and the Tableau has interpreted it that way. When it says year, this has one over here. What it really means is it's the first year that it's being taught. So it's interpreting it as a numerical value. It's really a string value because it's just, if you can think of it, instead of one, it's first, it's second. And, not every of one of these courses started in 2012. So we'll see that later. So that's just an example of, that data. If I was using this data set to do some research with Tableau, I would probably go in and change all these ones to first, and I would change this to string data. But so when I'm talking about the qualitative versus quantitative, the blue versus the green, Tableau calls those dimensions and measures. So measures are going to be the little hashtag sign, the green ones. And so you can think of that as math with measures. They're your quantitative valuables. And then the blue ones are going to be the dimensions. And so you can think of those as designate or dub your dimensions. And so that's really important to know because that's the way that Tableau lets you know what kind of data that you can build. And so we want to make sure those all look right here, but also know you can always come back to this data source tab and you can always change things and it will reflect that in all of your other ones. Tableau, right down here at the corner, it should be still in orange because we haven't clicked it. It says go to worksheet. So Tableau, you're going to work with 3 different kinds of files. You're going to be working in a worksheet, or you can be working in a dashboard or a story. We're not going to go over dashboards or stories today. That's going to be in Tableau 2. So stick around for that, the next workshop, and we'll talk about that. But today we're just going to go to a worksheet. And so if you click on that, this shows you the worksheet. So a worksheet is a single data visualization, a table, a bar graph, a pie chart, a line graph, something like that, just one data visualization. You can't build more than one in that. You, however, can do, tons and tons of worksheets. We can do sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, sheet 4. Whereas the dashboards and the stories, you can incorporate more than one data visualization. But if you have 3 tables, you should have 3 different worksheets when you're working on those tables. And that's just what we're going to do today. And so this is the main workspace of Tableau. So up at the top, we have the toolbar where you can do different functions. We have kind of stuff you should be familiar with, like file. If you need to connect to a new data source, you can. If you need to do a new worksheet, you can do it from there. Just kind of your typical toolbar. And then also under there, we have the little symbol toolbar. So there's the save, looks like the floppy disk, I think that's what they're called. There's really importantly a back button. If you're on a Windows, you can also do Control Z. I can't remember what the hotkey is on a Mac for to undo something, but you can also use that. That's really important. You got kind of a couple of things up there. If you hover over them, it will let you know what the little symbol does. And then all of your data is organized on this sidebar all the way to the left. So we can see now Tableau has kind of sorted it for us, and we have our dimensions are on the top and our measures are on the bottom. And so if we got to this stage and we saw, oh, maybe, percent female doesn't look right, you could go back to your data source and fix it, and it will update it right here. And then the big space in the middle where it says drop field here, that's your workspace. So once you start, it's a drag and drop interface, which I'll show you what that means in a second. So once you start dragging and dropping things in here, this is where it's going to build your visualization and you're going to be able to see what it looks like. And then the shelves up here at the top, so you can see where it says columns and rows, you can think of that like your X and Y axis, or well, rows are X, columns are Y, and then you can drag different aspects of your data to there. You can also drag them straight into the worksheet, but it'll kind of show you how that's working. And then in the middle between the sidebar and the workspace, you have your cards. That's what Tableau calls them. So we have pages, filters, and marks. So marks control what the sort of look of your data visualization is. If you want to change the color, if you want to change the size, the text, tooltip refers to if you hover over parts of your data visualization. This is a very unique Tableau thing. It's going to show you, and I'll show you what that means when we start building something. But that controls that. Filters, you can think of it like is ways to filter out the data you're working with only in your data visualization, right? So if we filter something, it's not going to take it out of our data source. We're still going to be able to use it in the next worksheet. But for example, our data set has a bunch of course subjects. If we only wanted to look at one of them, say computer science, we could use the filter, kind of drag right here. It should show you. See, you can tell it which ones you want and which ones you don't want. And that's how to do it with a qualitative variable. And then also if you do it with the measures, with a quantitative one, then you can, you can tell it to filter out or filter down to only certain values. And so those are all the different aspects of the workspace. I guess at the bottom is the where you can do new data sheets and data tabs. And so those are all the different aspects of the workspace that we're going to be working in. If you notice, when I hover over a piece of data in our data tab, it forms a little shape that looks like a pill. So we call those pills. And so if you hover over it, it kind of looks like this. If you click it, the text turns white, and that's how you know that you've selected it. If you click it too much, like I just did, you can change the name of it. There's little down arrows, so you can get, more information about it. We're going to be doing that. But basically, Tableau is a drag and drop interface. So what I mean by that is you can drag something straight into the interface. So you can see it starts building a table, and let's put it in the rows right there. Tableau is it is always trying to figure out what you're doing. It's trying to interpret your data and your visualization for you. Sometimes you got to give it a little help, but that's what it's doing. So it automatically thinks, okay, we might want to build a table. And so, I could click the back arrow. If I wanted to undo this, I could click Control Z or whatever the Mac hotkey is. But you can also just, if you drag something out and it doesn't look right, click it, drag it right back. So again, drag and drop interface. You can drag it out and you can drag it back. And so that's primarily what we're going to be doing today. And I also, you can drag it straight into the workspace. You can also drag it into the columns or the rows. And then you can also drag it over the marks card. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second, but it's like if you want the color to be directly associated with any of these variables in the visualization, you can drag something directly over it. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to build a table. And so this lets us know about so to build a table, there's this really cool thing. It's shut right now and it should be shut on everyone's. If you look all the way up in the right-hand corner, there's a little thing that says, show me. And sometimes it's going to be open on certain people's, but if you open it right now, you see all these visualization types and they're grayed out. So Tableau does this great thing where we can hover over them and it will tell us a type of data visualization and what we need to build it. So for example, the first one, the easiest data visualization to build is a table. And to build a table, you need a qualitative variable, a dimension, and a quantitative variable or a measure. Whereas if we go down to a box and whisker plot, you need just at least one measure to make that. To make a map, as you can see here, it's going to show you you need a geographic variable to make it. And so once you start dragging and dropping data into the workspace, these will they'll ungray to let you know the types of data visualizations that you can build with the data that you're using. So you can use it, you can look at it beforehand to know what you need, and as you start building, you can look at it to see kind of what you can do with the data. Also, when the Show Me tab is open, it does kind of cover some important stuff. Like over here where it's opened is where Tableau builds the legends for tables. So if I'm talking about something and you can't see it, just make sure your Show Me tab is closed. So we're going to leave it closed for right now, but we'll open it back up. And so as we saw in our Show Me tab, the tables require a text table, just a regular table, requires at least one dimension and at least one measure. So we'll go ahead and we will take the course title as our dimension. So grab it and just drag it into the workspace. And very smart Tableau kind of already knows that we want to start building a table. And so it started building a table. And so we have just all the different titles of the courses. And so next to the courses, what we can see is Tableau has started building placeholder text because it knows that we need another element to go in this table. And so the ABC is just a placeholder. And so if we want to put something into there, which we're going to do participants down at the bottom. So again, that's participants. If we want the participants to take the place of this text, we can either drag it over the text and let it do it like that. I'm going to click back, or we can drag it over the text in the marks card because then it knows we want to do the text. So just take participants and drag it over the ABC, and now we have a super simple table where we have the courses in these that were taught in these workshops, and then the amount of participants that participated in them. And when I was talking about the tooltip, so when I hover over, for example, this first data set, this is the tooltip, and right now it's just showing us, we don't have a lot of data in there, it's just showing us the course title and the participants, but you can do various things to the tooltip to tell it to put more or less in there when you hover over it. So we can also keep adding data to this table. So for example, let's take instructors and drag it over into the rows. And so now we have the course title and we also have the instructors that taught it. And you can change the order of those if you want by just dragging them, but you can keep adding data into the table by doing that. If you do another one, if we do course subject and you drag it to the end, you can see the order of how these pills are in the rows does matter. So if we drag course subject to the front, it kind of changes it and it's sort of organizing the table by course subject, then course title, then instructors. And so you can change various aspects of what's in there by just dragging and dropping. That's how you can reorganize the data in the table. And again, let's say we decided we didn't want the instructors in here. You just grab it and you can kind of just drag it back and that will take it out. And so you can always do that if you accidentally do something. It could be the same thing with the participants right here. I could grab it from the marks card and drag it out and it would take this data that's right here out. So one more thing that we're going to talk about with tables, that's a unique thing to doing with tables, is up at the top on the toolbar, you'll see this analysis tab. So the analysis tab allows for you to perform different kinds of analyses on the data. We're going to keep this really, really simple. This is just going to be doing a total, which you can do in the table. So if we go analysis, totals, you can see, you can show, we don't have a ton of data that could be added together in this table, but you can show row grand totals, column grand totals, things like that. So we can I'll do show column grand totals. And again, that's analysis, totals, show column grand totals. And so we can kind of see something moved a little bit if we scroll to the bottom of our table. So we now have this grand total that it's showed us. And that's in the analysis tab, and you can do that for various tables. Okay, so when I was talking about the Show Me tab, we open it again right now, so we can see, you can see a bunch of these different data visualization types have now become ungrayed out, right? And so now with this data that we've dragged into our workspace, these are the different kinds of visualizations that we could make with it. Because, again, you have to have different types for different things. So for example, we still couldn't make a map because we still don't have any geographic data. But if we go over to this third one up at the top, and again, this is the Show Me tab, the third one over, a highlighted table, we can do that. So if you click that, click highlighted table under the Show Me tab, it kind of turns our thing into a highlighted table. And so what that has done is based on, so you can see if you close the Show Me tab, you can see now you have a legend up here in the corner. And so you can see things that are a lower number of participants are this more lighter green blue, whereas the higher number of participants is the darker blue. And so you can kind of see that throughout, throughout the table, which is kind of cool. And then also, so you can edit the legends as well. If you hover over it and you click the little down arrow, you can edit the colors that you use on the legend. You can edit the title of it there, and you can hide it, you can format it and all that kind of stuff. So you have some capabilities to do that right there. And so another thing is you can see right here up at the top, we just have a title. So we want to be able to change this title. So you can do that a couple of different ways. You can just double click on it and it will let you change the name of the title there. You can change the font. It automatically is going to be this Tableau Light, which is kind of nice. You can make it bigger than 15. You can align it and stuff like that. Do note that if you do it this way, you do have to delete what is right there. And so I can call this text table, or you can call it number of course participants. Kind of call it whatever you want. If you just want to see what that looks like, you can click apply and it will show you. And let's say I'm like, I don't know. You can just click reset and it will totally undo it. You can also, and we can note this when we're going to be making some more worksheets in this session, you can double click at the bottom where it says sheet 1, which is what we're working in. And if I change this to text table, then it will automatically change the title to text table. You can still change the title up here, but if you name something in a worksheet, it's automatically going to make the title the name of whatever you've named the worksheet. Because again, a worksheet is one data visualization. So now we're going to do a new worksheet. And so like I said, in Tableau, there's always various ways you can do things. You could go to the top and under worksheet, do new worksheet. You could do Control M if you're on Windows, that's a hotkey, or you can just go to the bottom right next to where it says text table. If you hover over it, it lets you know that's a new worksheet. That's the worksheet symbol. You can just kind of click right there. And so now we can see we have text table and we have worksheet number 2. So for number 2, we're going to build a bar chart. I would say the second easiest type of visualization to build. So if we want to go ahead on our sheet 2, double click it. I think you can also, you can also right click it and say rename. But you can double click it. I'm going to say bar chart. And so again, you can see up there, the title is now changed. If we don't want that to be the title, we can still double click it and change it, which I might do later. But for now, this looks good. We want to get started. So if we hover over our Show Me tab and open it again, and we have a couple of different types of bar charts. For the horizontal bar chart, it's telling us we need at least one measure. Same thing for a stacked bar chart, you need a dimension or a measure. And then side-by-side bar charts, dimension and measures. But we basically know for a bar chart, it requires at least one measure, no matter what type of bar chart that you're going to be doing. And so for our measure, what we're going to be doing is looking at the median hours for certification. And so this is a fun little thing where I was talking about how we are not using the data set that's made for teaching in Tableau. We're using a real data set. So as such, these numerical data, this quantitative data, our measures a lot of them are in averages and percentages. And I will say something that even though our label for them says percent or median, that does not mean that Tableau has interpreted it that way. And so if we look at our median hours for certification, hover over it, click the down arrow, and then go down to default properties, aggregation. So again, hover over median hours for certification, click the down arrow, go to default properties and aggregation. We can see up at the top, Tableau has interpreted this as a sum data. And so if we're looking at the median hours, we don't want to add all the median hours together. We want Tableau to know that those are averages. So we just have to tell it to do that. And so with most of our numerical data in this data set, we're going to have to do this. The participants is one of the only ones because it's just an count data. So click average right there. And one of the ways that we know that this has done this, for example, if we drag what we just did, median hours, into the rows, we can see it says AVG, which is for average. So if it takes the labels from your labels like in your Excel spreadsheet, like whatever you title the columns in the Excel spreadsheet, it'll automatically import that into there. So yeah, you will need to be able to label it. Okay, so right now we know now it's interpreting this as an average. So if I take this back out and I go click median age, which again should also be an average, if you drag it into the rows, you can see right there it says sum. So that's how we know that Tableau is interpreted as a sum. But again, so yeah, that we'd want to do that if we were using the median age data as well. So just make sure that you have the median hours and an average by clicking the down arrow, default properties, aggregation, and then clicking the average. I also want to change the name of this because it's really long. So if we go back to the data source, so if we double click the name, we can just say hours for certification instead of median hours because it makes the title a little bit shorter. And so this is the cool thing I was talking about. Once I've changed the name over here, which again, I just did by double clicking it. If we go back to our bar chart on the bottom, we can see now it says hours for certification instead of median for certification. So if you change anything in your little data source tab, it's going to automatically update it in your data sidebar over here. Okay, so let's get started with making the bar chart. So let's grab that hours for certification, or median hours if you didn't change it, and let's drag it to rows. So again, Tableau's a little confused. It's like, what are you doing? So it's starting to build this. Don't worry about it. Now let's take course subject under at the top, and it's our dimension, and drag it to the columns, which again, columns is the x-axis, rows is the y-axis. So we can see we've got this nice basic little bar chart. So another thing is we don't have a ton of column variables in this, so you can see that it's kind of smushed a little bit to the side. Tableau is doing that automatically. Up at the top where it says standard in the toolbar, you can click the down arrow, and so you could make it fit the entire view or the width, and that'll make it, the width of it. I'm not gonna do that, but if you wanted to make it the entire view, if it was bothering you that it's kind of smushed to the side, you could do that, but you can't like drag it out in the same way that you could in like a different, like an Adobe program or something like that. And then this is another thing I was talking about with the Show Me tab. If we shut it, we could see, or if we open it, we can see the different types of data that we could make with these measures. And then once we start doing things with the legend, it's going to appear right there. So make sure that you keep it shut. So I do want to change the title for this. So I'm going to double click it. And we're going to call it Hours for Certification by Course Subject, just so we know what we're doing. Again, if you want to see what that looks like beforehand, you can click apply. If you wanted to change the font or something like that, you have to highlight it and you can click the down arrow. It can change the font. You could change the color that way for this if you wanted. And again, you can always click reset. And if you reset it, it will change the name to whatever you've titled the worksheet. So you can keep changing the title if you wanted. But okay. So another thing we can do, we'll start talking about the marks cards, like I was saying. So we only really have one color in this. It's this blue. You could do various colors, but basically I'm thinking, okay, we have our 4 different course subjects. I don't want each of these bars to be the same color. I want them to be different colors. So I know that I want the bars to be colored based on what the course subject is. So if we grab course subject, you can drag it directly over the color marks card. And voila, that changes the color of each of the bars. And we can see up in the corner, it's created our key or our legend for what each of the different ones are. So again, I can drag that right back out. That's dragging course subject over the color, and that changes it. And you still do have some options once you've changed the color. So this is just sort of automatically applying color scheme. It's probably the last one that I used in Tableau. But if you click on the color marks card, so again, just click on the mark card that says color, you can say, you can edit the opacity. There are some faint y-axis lines in there if you want to be able to see it through. You could change the opacity. And you could add a border, but you click edit colors right here. So again, I'm gonna go back. That's clicking the color marks card and clicking edit colors. And so that pulls it up. This is an automatic palette that it's assigned to it. And so if you want to change this, you can click the down arrow. We have a bunch of different options for different types of palettes. Let me see. Okay, so a cool one that we have, if we go to like the fourth one down, click it. And again, so now it shows you the palette that you're looking at, but if you want to apply it to your data, you have to click assign palette right there. So from the down list, click whatever one you want. I'm using the colorblind one, and you click assign palette. So that just assigns it, but then you still have to click apply to get it to look at your data. And so what this palette is kind of cool. This means someone with the red blind color blindness could be able to see and interpret the colors in this data visualization. And so that's just one option. Again, if you want to do reset, it'll put it back to the automatic, but you can choose one from down the list. You have to click assign palette, then you have to click apply to be able to see what it looks like, and then you can click OK, and you can see our little legend has updated with that as well. And so that's how you apply a color palette. And then if we go back to our text table, we can see here in the marks card, see the little like 4 circles that are the same as where it says color. That lets you know the data that is doing the different marks. So we know that the color in this data visualization is coming from the participant data because we see the little things right there. We know that the text data is also coming from the participant data. If we go back to our bar chart, we know that the colors are based on the course subject because it's right there. Again, if you look on the marks card, the little symbols, and we'll get into some other ones, it lets you know that the data that is using the different marks. So our color mark is coming from the course subject data. And so, we can add things in, we can take things in and out based on that. So another thing is our graph has automatically sorted these bars and organized them based on alphabetically the names of the dimensions, right? So we have computer science, and then government, health and social science, and then humanities, and then science and technology. But let's say, that's, organizing the data by the dimension. Let's say we want to organize it by the amount. So we have like a nice looking bar graph that's sorting by ascending or sorting by descending. There's a couple of ways that you can do that. So the first way is if we go up to the toolbar where the little symbols are, you can see if you kind of up by near the pencil symbol right above where it says course subject, you can see if you hover over it, there's little 3 bars and a down arrow. And so that lets you know you can sort it by ascending or 3 bars going from biggest to smallest, and you can sort it by descending. So if we click those, you can kind of see what happens. We can go ascending, we can go descending. So I'm going to go back to there. And we can also do that. So if we hover over where it says hours for certification, that's the y-axis data. Up at the top, we can also see that little symbol. So we can sort it by ascending, or we can sort it by descending, which I just think kind of looks nicer for a bar graph. Okay, so then, do you remember when I was talking about the filters, how you can filter out the data? So we'll do a good example of just how to do that really quickly in a way that's really easy to understand. So let's say in this data, we have this computer science data. Let's say we don't want this in there. So if we take course subject and we drag it to filters, we can see it's got all 4 different types of these data checked. If we uncheck computer science and click apply, then it takes out the computer science data. And again, it's showing you in here that you're filtering by the course subject. So if I click OK, and this is only filtering it for this data visualization. You did not just take out your computer science data from all your other worksheets or your data source. It's just this worksheet and this data visualization. And again, if you want to take that out, just drag it out of the filters. But again, that's dragging something into the filter. We can tell it not to do computer science. and then you can click OK, or you can click apply if you want to see what it looks like. And you can see it's taken it out of our little legend over here as well. Well, then I think we're going to move on to our next type of data visualization. So let's open up a new worksheet. And again, remember, you can use the little symbol at the bottom. You can say worksheet, new worksheet, or you can just kind of do Control M. We are going to do a line chart. So I'm going to, at the bottom, I'm going to call this, and again, to do a new worksheet, you can do that little symbol down at the bottom by where it says, by where the names of the sheets are to do new worksheet, or you can go worksheet up at the top, new worksheet. But make a new one. I'm going to double click where it says sheet 3, and I'm going to say line graph, because that's what we're going to make. And so as you can see, if you don't tell it to do a different title, the title is always going to automatically be whatever you name your worksheet. But again, you can change your worksheet, the title of it. You can call the worksheet something, and you can title your data visualization something else. So a line chart is a very simple kind of chart or graph, but it requires one particular kind of measure. So it requires time. You have to be showing change over time. So as the way that Tableau looks at it, that means that you need a date or a time data, which if we remember is known by the little calendar icon. So we can look, and this data set doesn't have a lot of date or time data, but we do have the launch date for these courses in this data set. And you can see the little calendar icon next to there. So if we open our Show Me tab again, you can also see if you hover over the line charts, it shows you, again, you need at least one piece of data. And so we can go ahead and do that. So now that we've opened the new worksheets, we're going to have to use our launch date. So take launch date. Well, actually, okay, so first let's do participants and take the participants to, take the participants to the rows. Again, that's the participants to the rows. And then we take the launch date pill and drag it to the columns. So make sure that your launch date is in your columns and your participants in your rows. So now we can notice our data set only has a couple of years, 2012, 2016, and some of the courses, because again, this is a real life data set, some of them didn't start in 2012. So there's like a little bit less data overall, you know, when you're looking at this graph when it's just in the years. And so you can tell, like our data is broken down if we look back at the data source. So the launch date, we have days, we have months, and we have years in this date data. So Tableau is just automatically going to think that you just want the year data, but you can tell it which type of that data that you want. So if you hover over it, and then again, this is the year launch data, and you click the down arrow, so we can see up here on down on this little scroll, we can tell it to look at this data by the year, by the quarter, by the month, or by the day. And so what we want to do is look at it by the month. So again, if I click out of that, we know that Tableau is interpreting this by the year. So we want to click the down arrow and bring it down to month. And there we go. So now we get a little bit more information based on how many participants were in each of these courses, based on when the course was launched. So now that we've changed that, and so we can see this line is blue. We can change the color of the line. So we can say if you click the color marks card, you can see it's blue. We could change it to green. You can change it to whatever color you want. You can make it more opaque. The markers down here, so we can get little bullet points at each of them if we wanted to under the markers. And then, you know, you can make it more or less opaque, but you have that option. So we can see up at the top in the marks, it says automatic. If you click the down arrow, you can take it down to an area chart also, if you wanted it to appear like that, kind of maybe be able to see the peaks and valleys, but we kind of want the automatic line chart. And I want to change the name. Again, you can just double click. You have to delete what it has in there. And I want to do participants by course launch date. I'm going to click apply so I can see it up there. That looks good. We are going to talk about table calculations. So you can leave your Tableau open. I'm going to go to a help page on tableau.com, which by the way, tableau.com, their tutorials and their help pages are really, 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 really helpful, but they have some really good little visuals that sort of explain what we're talking about. And so table calculations can be applied to data in an existing visualization. So if you look here, you have to have data in these various red squares, and then you can do calculations on that data, and then it will show the calculations in your worksheet only for your particular data visualization that you're working on. So you can kind of think like when we did this, the grand totals, or if you do subtotals in a table, that's kind of similar to like doing a table calculation. You're just using taking the data in the existing table and performing a calculation on it. So again, it's any of the data that you dragged into any of these places. And basically, there's different types of data partitions, the way that you can calculate the data. And so we're going to build a table that's going to look kind of like this so we can talk about it, but I just wanted to show you these visuals. So you can calculate data across the table. So for example, we have the data in January for this data set. You can make a calculation across the table from 2011 to 2014. You can make a calculation down the table for only the year 2011. You can do across and then down, make calculations that way. That would be a good calculation to do like by quarter or something like that. And you can do, the same thing down then across. There's also, you can do it within a little quarter percentile. You can do a couple of different ways, but that kind of gives you a basic idea of the different ways that you can calculate that. And so we're going to build a little table that looks like what theirs looked like so that we can do that. So first, this is all going to be with launch date. So first take launch date and drag it to the columns. And it's okay that it's doing it in the years. Then take launch date again and drag it to the rows. That's dragging the launch date to the rows and making it say quarter. So in the column should say year, and then you can just do the down arrow, bring it down to that first year to make sure it says that, the down arrow to that first quarter to make sure it says that, and then we'll drag it one more time to put it after quarter in the rows, and we'll make it go down to month. And so now we sort of have like a little table where things are broken down by quarter, by month, and then by year. And again, this is the aggregated data. So this is the year for every 2012 added together, every 2013 added together, things like that. And again, this data set, we see some blank spaces because not every one of these courses started in 2012, not everyone went to 2016. So just keep in mind we're working with a real life data set. So now we're going to take participants and we're going to drag them. And again, remember, we can drag it over the text placeholder in the table, or we can drag it over the text placeholder in the marks. And so we have there. So there's our, data for our participant data for all the different months. So a table calculation, you can start to do it by, so it has to be, again, something that has already been dragged into the workspace, right? It can't be, you can't do a table calculation from the data sidebar. You can only do it on data that's already in your, that's like essentially think of it already in your table in this example, because we're working on a table. So if you hover over some participants, which should be in your marks card, because again, it's representing the text, click the down arrow, you can see on this little thing that pops up, we have the option, you can do a quick table calculation, know that that's there, but that's not what we want to do. You want to open up the add table calculation. Ding. Okay, and so we can see here, this new window has popped up. And again, I'm going to go back. What you just do is you hover over the down arrow, add table calculation. And so this kind of shows us it automatically has already performed this. And you can see that highlighted in the yellow, but you can tell it to do different types. So the first part is the calculation type. So it's automatically going to do difference from. I'm going to change that to percent difference from, and you can do it across, you can do it down, you can do it across and then down. And all of these are kind of going to tell you different things. If you do specific dimensions, you can check or uncheck those at the different levels. We definitely wanted to show the calculation assistance because it tells us what we're doing, but we want to keep it as table across, so it's showing the difference from month to month added all together. So we can see there, and it's in a nice like percentage, whereas if we did difference from, it would just be in the numbers. So those are just different calculations. And as we can see here, if we click out, It has now changed what this data set looks like in here. So we can see now in our little marks card where it says some participants, we now have this little triangle. And so the triangle is the table calculation symbol. And so it lets you know that you have successfully put a calculation on there. So let's say if you want to take this off, you know, and you didn't like, I just did this, so I could click back, but if you've done a couple more things and you're like, this calculation is just making everything look so complicated, you can click the down arrow and you can see here it says clear table calculation. So that's the way you can just take it right off if you want to do it that way. But that's how you know that something has been calculated. But yeah, there's a lot of different types of calculations that you can do. We won't go into all of them, but that's just the basic way that you can do a general table calculation. Now we're going to open up a new worksheet, which, sorry to be so repetitive, but again, that's, you can do the little symbol next to where it says table calculations on your worksheet, or you can do worksheet, new worksheet, or Control M. So open up a new worksheet. I'm going to call this one pages because we're going to be working with the pages today. And again, it will automatically change the title to that. We don't have to keep it like that. So pages is one of our cards. It's one of our ways we can affect the visualization. We can affect the visuals of the visualization. And basically it's sort of like a little animated type thing. It can be used to break your data up into a series of views to see how one field affects the rest of the data. So first we have to build a visualization to be able to do this. And so take course subject and drag it into the columns. Again, that's course subject into the columns. And we're going to use our percent female, so the percentage of the students that took the participants in these courses that were females. But again, we know Tableau has taken our, so if we just drag this into rows, we can see it's doing the sum of the data, which is not what we want. So you can take it back out or click back or click Control Z. So if we go over to percent female, hover over it, click the down arrow, default properties, aggregation. So we can see right there, it's making a sum. These are percentages. We don't want it to add up the percentages. We want it to be the average. So again, hover over it, down arrow, default properties, aggregation, average. Make sure it's average. If we drag that into the rows, we see it says average on the front of it, so we know it's interpreting it correctly. And so we also get this, you know, nice bar graph, kind of like we did before. And so I do want to do the same thing where I have the different course subjects based on the colors. And so if we take course subject and drag it over the colors, I'm going to also do a different color scheme because I like my favorite color scheme. I really like ones that are I can't remember what it's called, but the colors are next to each other in the color wheel. But you don't have to change it. I'm just doing that for the visual because I like that. So we have our course subject in the columns, our average percent female participants in the rows, so we can see that there. And so now we're going to be dragging into the pages marks card. As remember I said, we have this data that's year, and it's interpreting it as account data, which is fine. But really it's a string data because it's first year, second year, third year. So we can see if we drag that into the pages. So now if you look all the way and make sure your Show Me tab is closed, if you look under the legend, you now have this little, I'm going to call it maybe like a toolbox that has made some pages of your data. And so page 1 is, you know, this is all the courses in the first year in the different subjects and how many, you know, the average amount of females, which we can see the government course had the highest percentage of females in the first year. And then if we click the second arrow, it takes us to the second year, and then the third year, and then the fourth year, which again, some of these courses didn't have 4 years. So, you know, the data look a little bit messy, but you can kind of see that's a way to divide it. You can also, if you go back to year 1, you can play it and it will play the data. You can kind of see it moving and see how it affects that. Or an even more simple example. So, you know, this year, take it out of the pages. So again, take it out of the pages. We go back to our regular graph. We have the dimension institution. So if we put it over here, now we get Harvard versus MIT. So percent female enrollment at Harvard, and then percent female enrollment at MIT. And I'm clicking these back and forth arrows. You can also click the play, it'll play it back and forth. You can click the down arrow and you can see the number of pages that have been sorted into there. And this isn't like maybe like the best one for making the animated. You could also do, if we click take the pages out, do the launch date. And then instead of it's doing it by years. So drag launch date into the pages. Instead of doing it by years, do it by months. And so we can see now we have a lot more data in there. So if we go over to our pages card and click, so there's like the three little arrows and the little box down more like on the left of it. If you click the right facing arrow, we can watch the number of female participants change through the launch date months. So you can see some of the months don't have any, participants, so they don't have the bars, but it's kind of interesting to watch it change over the course of a year. Basically, you're breaking up the data into a series of views that you can look at one by one to see how one field affects the rest of the data. So in this instance, we're seeing how the month launch date affects the percentage of female enrollment. And that's something, you can add that activity, the interactivity of the pages into your like final visualization that you do somewhere. So that's something that's like very unique to Tableau, which is kind of cool. So now we're going to talk about saving. Again, there's other things you can make in Tableau. You can make stories and you can make dashboards, but we won't get into those until the second part of this workshop. But if I wanted to just save these particular worksheets, which again, each worksheet is a single visualization, the saving capabilities. So yours might look a little bit different than what I'm going to do right now because I am using the Tableau desktop version for teachers because, we teach Tableau, so we have that. So that gives you a ton of more options to save things. Whereas if you are using Tableau Public and you click File Save, you're not going to see all these options. You're going to see Save to Tableau Public Server and Save to Tableau Public Server as. And so what that means again, when you save to the Tableau public server is you save it like here. Here's my Tableau public profile. These ones I've created. If you really need to save it, you can save it to there, but you can only save it to where you can open it back up in Tableau from this server. You won't be able to save it to your machine. You won't be able to export a PNG, a JPEG, something like that. You probably could take a screenshot of the visualization if you really just needed it right there. I think you do have some capabilities, maybe if you open it in Tableau public server once you've uploaded it to there, to maybe save some stuff out of it, but I can't remember exactly what they are. So that's like what we were saying, if you're going to be using this for research or for making visualizations for like a budget or something like that, I would highly recommend trying to get the desktop version because it's much easier to save things that way. And then again, you can create, if you're using the public version, you click Save Tableau Public Server, it'll give you an option from right there to save it, and then it publishes it on here. You can tell it not to publish something on your profile. It'll just be available to you on your profile. But if you upload a data visualization with or without your data to this public profile, just note that it is public. So if you're using a sensitive data set, just make sure it's okay that you post a data visualization or the data to your Tableau public profile before you do. So if you're using sensitive data, it might be better to use the desktop version. But to save, again, you just click File Save. If you're going from desktop to the public server, I do think you have to like extract your data before you can save it to the public server. But basically, you have two options for saving if you're not using Tableau Public. And so if I pull it up, that's going to be, you can save as a workbook, or you can save as a packaged workbook. And the difference between the workbook and the packaged workbook is one will save your data along with your data visualizations. And so if you have a big data file you're working with in Tableau, always save it as a Tableau workbook, a packaged workbook, instead of just like a regular workbook, because you want to save your original data with it and all the stuff that you did to it within Tableau. And then a cool functionality that we have in The Tableau desktop version is print to PDF. So I could save a PDF of this visualization by saying print to PDF, or you could save, you can export it. Yeah, here we go. We can do different exports to a PowerPoint. You can export something to a JPEG and stuff like that, which is available to you if you're using particularly the Tableau desktop. Thank you so much, everyone. And I really hope everybody comes back for part 2 and part 3.